Squirting cucumber. Yep, that is the actual name of a real plant. And before your brain takes that name somewhere it probably shouldn't, this cucumber has a much stranger story. Because when it gets ripe, it doesn't politely drop its seeds. It shoots them. And not a little. These tiny seeds can blast through the air at around 72 kilometers per hour, traveling several meters away from the plant in a fraction of a second. Basically, this plant waits patiently for the perfect moment and then says, "Everybody out." So what exactly is going on inside this ridiculous little fruit? Because the answer involves pressure, physics, a rapidly moving stem, and one of nature's weirdest ways of launching offspring into the world. What is a squirting cucumber? First, despite the name, this isn't the cucumber sitting in your refrigerator. The squirting cucumber is Ecballium elaterium, a member of the gourd family, the same broader plant family that includes cucumbers, watermelons, and pumpkins. It is native to the Mediterranean region and grows as a trailing plant, usually close to the ground. Its fruits are small, oval-shaped, and greenish-blue, reaching roughly 5 centimeters in length. And when you look at one sitting quietly on the plant, there is not much about it that screams biological canon. But inside that little fruit is where things get interesting. As the fruit develops, it fills with a thick, mucilaginous fluid. And gradually, pressure begins to build. A lot of pressure. The pressure build-up. The plant isn't using an explosive chemical reaction. There is no tiny combustion chamber hidden inside the fruit. The mechanism is much more elegant. The fruit becomes a pressurized system. As it ripens, fluid accumulates inside it, producing increasing turgor pressure, essentially pressure generated by fluid within living plant tissues. For weeks, this system is quietly preparing. But then something unusual happens in the days leading up to launch. Some of that fluid moves out of the fruit and into the stem. And this seemingly small change has a huge consequence. The stem becomes longer, thicker, and stiffer. At the same time, the fruit changes its orientation. Researchers found that the stem straightens as the fruit approaches maturity, helping position the fruit at an angle suitable for launching the seeds. In other words, the plant isn't simply building pressure. It's also preparing the launcher. The launcher is being aimed. This is one of the most remarkable parts of the story. You might expect the fruit to simply burst wherever it happens to be pointing. But that's not what happens. The changing stem helps rotate the fruit into a more effective launch position. The 2024 Oxford-led research found that the fruit moves from a more upright position toward an angle close to 45 degrees as it ripens. And that matters because the angle at which something is launched affects where it eventually lands. The plant is therefore changing the geometry of its own launch system before the launch even begins. And all of this is happening without muscles, bones, or a nervous system. Just plant tissue, fluid pressure, and changing structure. The moment everything lets go, eventually, the fruit reaches its breaking point. The connection between the fruit and its stem suddenly gives way. And then, whoosh. The pressurized fluid shoots outward, carrying the seeds with it. The entire event is so fast that ordinary video barely captures what is happening. Researchers had to use high-speed cameras to properly study it. The launch itself lasts only about 30 milliseconds. That's 0.03 of a second. Fast enough that what looks like a simple squirt to our eyes is actually an extremely rapid mechanical event. And the seeds aren't just drifting away with the liquid. They are being launched at remarkable speeds. The Oxford study measured speeds of around 20 meters per second, with seeds traveling as far as roughly 10 meters from the parent plant. For a fruit only about 5 centimeters long, that's an enormous distance. The researchers described the maximum distance as around 250 times the length of the fruit. So if the fruit were 5 centimeters long, its seeds could travel roughly 10 meters. That is an impressive piece of plant engineering. But why does it need to shoot them? This raises a bigger question. Why go through all this trouble? Why not simply let the seeds fall underneath the plant? Because staying too close to the parent isn't always ideal. New plants growing directly beside their parent can end up competing for resources such as space, water, and nutrients. Dispersing seeds farther away gives at least some offspring a chance to establish themselves elsewhere. And the squirting cucumber has a particularly interesting solution. It doesn't simply launch every seed along exactly the same path. As the fruit empties, the pressure inside it changes. At the same time, the fruit rotates during the launch. That means the seeds released earlier and those released later don't necessarily follow identical trajectories. The first seeds can leave faster and travel farther. Later seeds are launched more slowly and at changing angles. The result is a spread of seeds over a much wider area. The 2024 study found that fruits positioned around the plant can collectively produce a roughly ring-shaped distribution of seeds, extending from about 2 to 10 meters from the parent plant. So the plant isn't just firing seeds. Its entire launch sequence helps distribute them. What's inside the fruit? Scientists have also looked inside the fruit using technology that allows them to examine its internal structure without simply cutting it apart. A 2025 study used micro-CT imaging to reconstruct the fruit in 3 dimensions. Researchers found that the seeds are arranged in 6 longitudinal rows inside the fruit. A fruit can contain as many as about 53 seeds, although the number varies considerably depending on conditions. And the seeds themselves have another unusual feature. After they are expelled, their outer coating can form a gel-like, mucilaginous layer. When hydrated and later dried in contact with a surface, that coating can become strongly adhesive. Researchers measured adhesive forces reaching up to 27.5 newtons under their experimental conditions. Why might that matter? Because getting a seed away from the parent is only half the problem. Eventually, that seed has to remain in a suitable place long enough to germinate. The sticky coating may help the seed maintain contact with the ground and potentially protect it from drying out. So even after the spectacular launch is over, the seed has another trick. A plant that has been puzzling scientists for centuries. The squirting cucumber isn't a newly discovered plant. Scientists have been fascinated by its explosive seed dispersal for more than a century. But seeing something happen isn't the same as understanding exactly how it happens. For a long time, researchers could observe the fruit shooting its seeds. What was much harder to understand was the precise chain of mechanical events taking place in those tiny fractions of a second. Modern technology changed that. High-speed cameras could slow the launch down. CT scanning could reveal the internal structure. Measurements could track changes in the fruit and stem. And mathematical models could test how pressure, rotation, launch angle, and seed position interact. Put all of these together, and the squirting cucumber stopped looking like a strange botanical curiosity. It started looking like a remarkably coordinated mechanical system. And the name actually has a meaning. Even its scientific name gives away part of the story. The genus Ecballium comes from a Greek word associated with throwing or casting out. So this plant has essentially been named for what it does best: throw things. And unlike many plants that depend on animals to carry their seeds, this one has evolved a mechanism capable of doing the job itself. No bird needs to pick up the seed. No mammal needs to eat the fruit. No gust of wind needs to carry it away. The plant stores energy in a pressurized system and releases that energy in an incredibly short burst. The safety twist. There is, however, one important detail. The squirting cucumber may look like something you could pick up and treat like an ordinary cucumber. It isn't. Kew lists the plant as inedible because it contains toxic chemicals, and it isn't something that should be treated as food or as a home remedy. So this is one cucumber that is much better appreciated from a safe distance, especially when it's ripe. Because the fruit doesn't need much help to make its presence known. The squirting cucumber may look like a small, ordinary fruit. But inside that fruit is a pressurized system that spends weeks preparing for a launch lasting only milliseconds. The stem changes. The fruit rotates. The pressure builds. And then the seeds are fired outward at astonishing speed. It's a reminder that some of the most extraordinary engineering on Earth isn't found inside a machine. Sometimes, it's growing quietly on the ground. And if this squirting cucumber just earned your respect, do the plant a favor. Give this video a like and subscribe. Because if nature can turn a tiny fruit into a seed-launching cannon, you really don't want to miss what it's hiding next. Until the next one, keep looking closer.